So, like I said, we're going to talk a little bit tonight on LB GUPS. We'll go through that, and then I'm going to jump into, I probably have 4 or 5 slides on key performance indicators, what we call KPIs, on what you should measure, why you're measuring those things, just thinking about that, especially where you guys are at in the cycle. And then I'll jump into like your question on some of the CRM. The company that I've been really successful with, and they should probably pay me for it, I'm teasing, Salesforce.com. And I'm going to show you guys some of that. Some of you are probably already familiar with what they do. So LB GUPS, it's not rocket science. It's really fundamentals, but it makes you think different. So what I'm talking about with LB GUPS, and let me start with the very top. So really break it down and think about where you guys are at today. And think about some of your ideas and maybe potential products or services that you guys are looking to form a company around, or maybe you're already there. I don't know where the different teams are at in the cycle, but think about the very fundamental basics about your company or even the company you work with today. How do customers or prospects learn about your company, your product, or your services? So how do they learn about you? So today, do you have a website? Are they Googling you? Are they going out to your website? Are you using social media to tell people? Is it word of mouth? All those type of things are you doing? I know it's premature for a lot where you guys are at today, but later maybe you're doing Groupon ads, or are you doing, maybe there's email blasts that you use, different ways, but how are they really learning about your products or your services? That's the L. So those are things that, okay, and that generates questions in your mind. How do we want them? And where do we want to prioritize? You only have so many of you guys at this table. So where do you want to spend your energy? Where do you think you're going to get the biggest bang for your buck later when you go to ultimately sell those products or those services? So that's the L. The buy. So B being, once they learn, how do they purchase your product or services? So what I mean by that is really the channel. So now, say you went out there and you've done your marketing, you've done some of your advertising. How are they getting your product? Where are you selling it through? Do you have a retail front? You got a brick and mortar that you're going to go through? Are you using a website that ultimately they're going to be purchasing your product through? Is it something that you're going to work with a distributor? Are you going to use a disti out there in regards to help distribute your products? And maybe you've got it today where it helps you prioritize where I should put my product first, or how they should ultimately buy that product. So what I mean by that is, retail front, that's expensive to get that location. You're paying the rent, all those types of things, versus you're doing an online channel where they're purchasing right online through you. But you typically have the large, you got the distributors, you got the retail front, you got the web-based front, maybe you're shipping and packaging right out of the garage, right at your home front, you're doing that too. But those are the things that ultimately, how are they going to get it? So when they go to buy that, those are, like I said, fundamental building blocks that you can build your processes off that ultimately help scale your company. The get, so the G is, once it's purchased, how do they get the product? So the delivery standpoint, what I mean by that today is, who are you using? Once again, are you in your garage and you guys are packaged together and then you're going down to the postal service, or you're using FedEx, or what are your different types of delivery methods that ultimately, are they coming to your storefront to get that product? Those are all things that you need to think about. And I know it sounds like, I was talking to Nick, that you guys are going to have the finance, the accounting one here, training in another couple weeks. It's about cash flow. What can you afford to do? So that all equates into ties into your business model and your business plan. Those are costs that are associated to that. And I know I watched Mark a little bit of his YouTube on the business modeling side. I honestly thought that was pretty good. So that kind of dovetail in. I know you guys did some of the map there where you filled out those things. Once again, so what's the delivery mechanism? Those are things, and their costs associated today. Even today, for Micron, I support and I run all of our worldwide sales. So I have support all that. So in what we call crucial.com business, I do over $1 billion of business, on our way to $2 billion between our retail business and our consumer business, which is our online business. So today, when I break down our costs and I'm looking at FedEx, or I'm looking at UPS, or I'm shipping with a private firm, or if I'm in a different country and I'm shipping, those are all costs associated to running your business. So those are things you need to think about. Now the use. This one is I'll give you an example where it'll make sense. But once they receive it, how do they know how to use it? So today, I don't know what your guys' products or services that you're ultimately going to be running the company on, but I'll give you one, for example, on FAQs. For us, and you'll see a sheet here later, when I was at AT&T Wireless, it used to cost us, I'm trying to remember the numbers right, but it was like $1 million for every 8 minutes. What I mean by that is when you call in, say you get the next iPhone 8. It's a beta, it's out, the 7's not even out, but we're giving you to test this thing out. There's a whole new operating system, you get confused on it, and this age generation is not quite as much as the older ones, but first thing that people would do is they'd call or they go in the store, or for me, I give it to my daughter and she's like, here Dad, here's how it works. But we used to call, so every time somebody called, every time you were on the phone with them for 8 minutes was $1 million. And what I mean by that is we had 11 call centers worldwide. By the time you pay for those call centers, you staff those call centers. It's a lot of capital. So that's why people are usually pretty much, I won't say in a hurry, but they like to get you off the phone. So what we did for the used part was, now we say you go to AT&T Wireless or you go to Verizon, before you leave that store, they're pretty much firing up that phone for you. It's working. They're making sure your contacts are loaded, your music's loaded, you understand, you have questions. When you leave that store, you're like, cool, my phone works, it's awesome, I'm on, I'm ready to roll. So that's my point. When we used to do is before, when we would ship them out, we would put in the top 10 questions that we would get if you got a billing question or profile, tips on how to use that phone, all those things. Because I don't say we didn't want you to call us, but we didn't want you to call us because it was $1 million every 8 minutes we talked to somebody. And we took 1 million calls a day. So you can do the math pretty quick. So that's what I mean by the FAQs. We'd push you to our website. So a lot of times when you had questions, it was online service, e-service for you guys. Anytime you had a question, you could go to the site and look at those top 10 questions and address that. That was, there's 6 of you or 5 of you guys at the table right now. Think about that. Next thing you do, 100 customers, you got 1,000 customers, and maybe you got some type of product that there's technical things on it and they have problems or challenges. Who's taking all those calls? Meanwhile, maybe you have that on your site. Those are things, once again, it just, if you can direct them to self-serve themselves, it saves you a lot of money, a lot of headaches, and also make sure they're set up for success when they receive your product. It's just a good thing to do. Now the pay piece, so that was the use. So we got learn, buy, get, use. When you get into the pay piece, once again, we're trying to scale a company. We're starting to look at the fundamentals. What are you taking? So you say you got a web channel. In regards to a website, are you taking Bill Me Later? Are you taking PayPal? Are you doing American Express, Discover Card? What are the fees behind it? What's the one you put on the top of your phone? Is it Block? What's the one that? Square that goes on the top. Well, you know, Square there, I can't remember what the percentage is right now, but those are all these things that you need to think about. What happens if somebody wants to write you a check? Do you do checks? As you get bigger and you scale more, you're going to have companies coming to you that they do purchase orders, especially the large, mid-sized companies. They're not going to use their credit card. How do you handle a purchase order? So those are some of the fundamental things that, I'm not saying you need to do all that now, but those are things that you want to think about as you get into it. Or they also do what they call EDI. EDI transactions, for example, like Micron. For our large top customers, that's all we do. And those are just electronic data that goes back and forth all the way from the pricing side to the shipment side to the inventory side. It's all electronic. The service side of it, you know, what types of services are you going to provide to give a superior customer experience and how? Those are ones that, you know, you're all excited. You shipped out, say, 1,000 units or maybe it's a product where they download it. You know, you downloaded all these things or you shipped it out. What happens if something didn't work right, the download for whatever doesn't work right, or you shipped them certain products, maybe there was some quality challenge, they have to return the product. RMAs, how do you process that? What happens if they want a credit? How do you issue the credit? So these are all, and we'll touch a little more on that later, but these are some of the fundamental things that as you guys start to think through and start to look at your company and your operations all the way from sales to how you support those customers, that you got to process. And the more that you keep it simple, that would be my biggest recommendation. And like I said, all the different places that I've had a great opportunity to work and help build and support, keep it simple. But these are things that work in, I don't care whatever industry you're in, those are things, and I've went in my background all the way from from aerospace to technology to wireless to semiconductors to Microsoft being a software company, that every one of these things, they may not call this the same thing, but these are processes that help scale a company effectively. The other thing I wanted to just put in your brain a little bit, because when I was thinking about when I was helping mentor last year, was when you really look at the revenue side of things, the world's big out there. So my point on this, and what is the size of your opportunity? At the bottom it says it's a big world, think big. A lot of times we go into this, and what I've learned too in the couple startups that I had was you get pretty tunnel vision, and you get somewhat scared and saying, how do we do this? Should we hit the Treasure Valley? I mean, should we really focus on Boise first and really do kind of a pilot there and figure out, do we just go down that path and get that all worked out, and then next we'll expand out to the Treasure Valley, then we'll conquer the Northwest, we'll add Washington and Oregon in there, or do we go to the United States? Or my point of bringing this up is, don't be limited in the beginning. I'm not saying go big, go after the world right out of the gate. But what I'm saying is, when you think about LB Gups, you think about these processes, and I'll give you a good example. So when I was at Who's Calling, we were going national. We did a great job, and all of a sudden we got X amount of accounts in the West, we had X amount of accounts in the East, the South. But what happened was, all of a sudden, H&R Block knocks on our door, Fidelity Financial Services knocks on our door, and we're like, this is awesome. We start doing a deal with these guys, and we did. And we looked at, okay, how do we support them? How do we service? And the next thing you know is, okay, all of a sudden they're in the UK. Oh, they're in New Zealand. Oh, they're in here. So it's like, if we hadn't really thought about the scaling and the processes, and we were very narrow focused about Boise or Seattle in that case, how do you expand that? But my point is on some of this is, think about the big picture. Not saying you have to go there now, but I always have that in your back of your mind, because it can happen pretty fast. And when it happens pretty fast, what do you tell you tell Fidelity? Sorry, we can't support you in that other country. You better figure out how you're going to staff it and how you're going to scale it. So those are just feedback in areas that can kind of bite you for later on. So I'm going to jump into, and I'm going to try not to rat hole on this too bad, but the KPIs. And I know when I was the first startup when I was involved, and I was talking to my CEO, my CFO, and they're like, "What do you mean about these KPIs?" And I'm thinking, God, you guys have been in business a long time, many years. You should know this stuff. It's in my mind, and I'm thinking, okay, I got to do a better job of really walking them through it. So you guys will get this information later. I don't want to spend a lot of time on walking you line by line. But key performance indicators, my analogy on this is pretty simple. It's like when you get in your car and you've got your dashboard in front of you. You've got your fuel gauge, you got your speedometers, you got your RPM, the radio's right over there. Those are all things right in front of you that you can control, and you have visibility into what's going on. Those are the same types of concepts that we're talking about when you're running your business. And I'm going to give you some examples there in a minute. But at the bottom one on here, it really allows you to make better decisions faster. So it gives you the data. A lot of times it's real-time data right in front of you, where you may have to do some course adjustment on where the company's heading, or all of a sudden, it was like the example I gave you with Fidelity Investments. It was one of those that we were doing great, and all of a sudden one of the Goliaths comes along like that. It's like, okay, what is that going to do to us? You really don't want to say no, but then again, you want to make sure you're in the right position to move forward and scale effectively, and make sure you're giving them a good quality product and also really good service. So that's what I mean. And the basics on KPIs are things that will help you measure. And if you're looking at those things, ultimately, I key in at the bottom one, because it helps separate you from your competition too. You can sometimes run circles around your competition, because one, you already know what they're doing because you're paying attention to those things, because maybe they're one of your key performance indicators on business intelligence, what your competitors are doing. You're monitoring those things. Maybe it's I know today in our .com business, we're continually looking at our competitors, what prices they're offering, new products that they've got, where they're at in the retail stores, what shelf they're on. It's all data that we have, and next thing you know, when we go out for, if it's a Christmas special, or if it's for us, it's like kids are back to school. There's a lot of things that we look at, all the way from pricing, how we do promotion, to placement. You talk about 4 Ps of marketing and basically product management. These are things that you can have indicators around. You got to be careful too, where you don't want to, get into what we call analysis paralysis, where you got too much data and you're not nimble enough to be able to continue to move. But these are things that'll help you get smarter and scale. So I'm going to run you through, I've got 2 slides on here, and then I think there's a couple slides and there's some dashboards that'll give you a feel for what I'm talking about in regards to things you want to look at. So the first one is really at the top of the top, when you think about a sales funnel, at the end of the day, you 5 are here, somebody's doing the financials, 2 of you are selling, 1 of you is doing product development, the other one's making sure the storefront's open, you know, and people are coming through and doing customer service. So at the end of the day, the 2 that are really focused on the sales that are out there, you're really looking at, and we talked about it earlier, how many people are you touching per day that are potential customers? You know, at the end of the day, whether you call them prospects, that ultimately turn into opportunities as they start to understand your products or services, that ultimately turn into leads and deals. And when you look at the numbers, I've seen through the years where, say you have 10 opportunities in front of you, a really good number is you close 3 of them that actually turn into a sale. Honestly, the average is probably between 1 to 3. And if you're doing 1, that's pretty good. So it's all a numbers game of how many folks are coming in to look at your services or your products. But don't kick yourself if you don't knock 10 out of 10 out of the park. But those are things in regards to the sales funnel that you want to take a look at. These are some of the things and some of the terms that a lot of you probably know, and there's some of maybe you don't. But they always talk about top line revenue. That's at the end of the day, it's really looking at your gross sales. So how much did you sell this week or this month? How much was that in top line? That's not taking any of your costs out. You know, I sold $10,000 this week. Is that good or is that bad? I don't know. But when you really look at it and you think about bottom line, then you're looking at, and you guys will see more, and you guys get this stuff anyhow, but you'll see more of that when you get into the finance and the accounting side. And Mark probably highlights some of this when you talk about the business model, business planning. But the bottom line is ultimate your costs, you know, minus ultimate ultimately minus your top line, which shows your net profit, or some people will call it, depending if you're a public or private company, EBITDA, which earnings before income tax and depreciation. These are a couple terms that I'd learned through the years, and ARPU, here, what is that? ASPs, that's really when you look at products, and ARPU is average revenue per unit. So how many did you sell and what type of unit are? ASP is your average sales price. So if you got widget A or product B, what's your average sales price? And it may change over time. For example, when I was at AT&T Wireless, we used to sell a mobile device for, say, $299 in LA, and then we'd sell it for $399 in Manhattan. And you're like, really? Same phone. Why would you do it? Well, the market would pay for that. So then we didn't advertise it. We're charging $100 more across the country. What used to bite us every once in a while was these large companies that had people in LA and they had people in Manhattan. Every once in a while they get together and they're talking, yeah, I got this new device, it's $390. Well, I got it for $299. And then they call us and say, hey, what's going on? Give us a credit. And we go through and give them a credit. But those are examples. But TAM and SAM, like I talked earlier, TAM, total available market. I showed you the picture of the globe. So at the end of the day, you have sellable available market and total available market. And all that means is that, say we're talking that you're going to go, you guys are going after the state of Idaho. You're going to nail it. That's all you're going to focus on. The next 365 days you're going for it. At the end of the day, that's your market. Now, when you get into it, your product may not fit for everybody. Maybe you've got a market that, say, you're going after, I don't know, the teen market or something. So say there's 1 million people, I don't know what the total population of Idaho, but to say there's 1 million people in Idaho, there's only, 100,000 teens. So really your sellable available market is 100,000. So when you do your model, you're not calculating it off 1 million people. You're really looking at what's the potential that I have in the teen market. Does that make sense? Okay. The revenue per head count. That's one that actually VC firms look at a lot. And it's just a quick and dirty calculation where they'll look at, say you do 10 million in sales. And your guys go, that's awesome. That's a lot of money. And say you have 25 employees that does 10 million in sales. That's pretty dang good. Now, what about a company that's doing, your competitors are doing 10 million. And at the end of the day, they actually have 100 employees. So when a venture capital looks at it, either to invest money into you or say like last company I was telling you about with ours that we ended up selling out to one, those are quick calculations that they look at to say how much revenue is being generated per head count. And all of a sudden it's 4 to 1. And they're thinking, oh, that company's worth, the valuation of that company's a lot more, and this other one's kind of diluted. So that's just something to keep back of your mind for later on. And then you get into cycle time. So cycle time is just really looking at the end of the day, how fast can you produce in regards to getting through all the way from your quotes to orders. It's productivity. Those are things that you kind of want to keep your eye on, especially as you get into inventory and people are returning products to you. That eats away time and then ultimately can eat away where you've got to hire additional bodies that ultimately, when we talked earlier about your bottom line, may tap into your bottom line and the margins that you guys are making on those different types of products. I've got this, and I'm going to go through some dashboards. I'm going to tell you kind of, I don't know if it's good or bad, but it's kind of a funny story back in the time. So churn is typically something where you're losing customers. Either your competitors are out there stealing them away from you, or you're not doing a very good job of servicing them. Your prices are too high. You know, X amount came through your doorstep or doorway the other day and bought, you know, so many products, and next month all of a sudden things are declining, or your website traffic's going down. Why are these things happening? So those are things you want to understand. And the T-Mobile one was just a funny story where we had, oh geez, I think it was a couple thousand customers at AT&T Wireless where, this is being recorded, isn't it? Where we had really crappy customers. And what I mean by that, you're thinking crappy customers, they're ones that ultimately weren't paying their bills. They were really credit risk customers. They weren't paying, or they weren't paying on time. It took a lot of people to manage those customers. And at the end of the day, the value that we put on those customers was not very high. So somebody got a brilliant idea somewhere and said, let's fire these customers. Thinking, how do you fire a customer? Why would you want to do that? So what they did was put a list together of these couple thousand clients and ultimately looked and said, okay, who can we pass them on to? So they ultimately looked and said, we're going to pass them on to one of our competitors. So we were charging $69 a month. T-Mobile was charging $39 a month. We had, I don't know how many bodies trying to service these customers. So we actually set the call center up, had a call, outbound call these customers and said, hey, it looks like you're having trouble paying your bills and things like that. And we care a lot about you as customers, and we really want to provide you maybe an opportunity that can help you save some money per month. And by the way, we noticed one of our competitors is really, honestly, one of their rate plans is half of what ours is. Matter of fact, here's their number. We'll give you we'll let you out of your contract if you do it in the next 7 to 10 days. And they were all excited. The next thing you know, a couple thousand customers. In churn, you're thinking, you don't want to lose 2,000 customers. But at the end of the day, they went over to our competitor. I'm sure our competitor was pretty excited they got all these new customers, but at the end of the day, they're struggling and they're throwing bodies at it. So that's a case where churn can actually be good. I'm not saying you want to repeat that, but that's sometimes how things happen. If I keep going down through this, CPGA is what they call cost per gross ad. And all I mean by that, you guys, I don't want to bore you to death on this stuff, but it's important. So every time you bring a customer on board into that wants to buy one of your products or services, how much does that cost you? So you guys were really going through the learn, and you're saying, you know, we're going to do all these types of marketing, all these types of campaigns. At the end of the day, anytime we added a new customer when I was in the mobile space, it was any type of business customers. I think it was like, when we knew the number, it was like $382 every time we brought on a company, just to set them up, to market to them. A consumer was like $60. So things that you would get in your inbox, or ultimately you would do, a lot of time they would do direct mail, that kind of stuff. So at the end of the day, when you're onboarding customers, what's it costing you to do that? Not saying you need to care about it too much now, but those are things you have to be, they'll come and bite you later. So those are certain types of campaigns that you can look at from a KPI perspective. Revenue leakage, I already told you about the handle time, $1 million for every 8 minutes. Those are costs that can get you later. That's just cost of doing business. We always looked at reps that could handle our business no matter what company I was at, that if you talk to somebody, hopefully they're knowledgeable enough, one, to answer your question. If it's and not always the case like billing. Billing may be unique, but if they're talking about your products or your services, that folks in your company understand that pretty well. That helps you a lot. There's also ways that you can tier customers. So ones that are are bigger customers and are worth more to you. We used to call it LTV, or lifetime value. Those are ones that maybe you want to put a little more energy around. Those are customers you really don't want to lose. You guys were talking about like government accounts. Those are ones that margins are usually good. You call stickiness, where they typically stay around you unless your product or your service isn't working well. Those are ones that maybe you want to make sure you're having a team that they can call in. Typically, the bottom one, your e-commerce channels. Those are typically the ones that are the most cost effective, where your margins are the highest. You think about it, so you're not paying brick and mortar, you're not paying rent. It's things that people can do business right online with you. You can do banner ads, there's all types of promotions you can do. They can do self-service. So those are opportunities that you can, and I'll show you an example here in a second on one of the dashboards that the folks look at. But think about that when you guys are thinking about your products and services. Thinking about that if you're having a website. Thinking about that in regards to how you're going to service folks. That's a cheap channel to do business. And when I say cheap, that doesn't mean that it's not good quality. That just means it's cost effective. So those are opportunities ahead for you. Now, this is a really basic one. All they're looking here at the top. I know you guys can't see in the back, but they're talking about revenue per sale. So here's a product they're selling for $750. Here's my cost. It's ultimately about $200, no, actually almost $500. And then I'm profiting your cost minus your top line. That's about $260 per product. It's a quick gauge. And maybe things change every quarter. Maybe you're increasing the price on that. Your margins are going up. It's a quick gauge. And down below it talks to you about how much it costs you to maintain that lead. And then ultimately it gives you a quick satisfaction metric over there. This is a quick dashboard. This is one that I talked about, the e-commerce site. So this is one that really, and you can look at these things later. And on the left it talks about, here it says US visitors, UK visitors. It looks like they had deals with France, Italy, Europe. Global conversion means, on the far left talks about, here's how many, here's what kind of traffic they had. This WW, I know you guys, it's hard to read. These are different weeks. These are weeks through the year. Here's where they average about 250, it looks like about 250,000 people that came to their site per week. And at the end of the day, their conversion rate was almost about 3%. You're thinking, that doesn't sound very good. Actually, on a commerce business, if you're ranging between, honestly, about 3 to 6% or 2 to 6% conversion, meaning that people coming to your site at the end of the day, they're hitting the shopping cart and they're checking out, that's a pretty good number. And when you look at the numbers in regard, this is just a fact for you for later. Anything under $50, a product that you're selling under $50, the conversion rate's typically higher. So it's more discretionary money, where if it's under 50, like, I'm going to buy it. It's not that big a deal. I'm going to hit the buy button. So it's about 6%. But once you get over $50, your conversion rates drop down to about 3. And if you're hitting 3 to 4%, you're actually doing pretty good. That's what this chart's showing. It shows the different regions. And then down here, it really talks about some of the data, and I hate to go through all this stuff with you guys, but it's really important, where they're looking at, you know, here's our week over week, which is WOW, 20%. So that means that their increase that week, 20% of more people hit their site. Why is that? Did you do a special promotion? Did you do a new product launch? Are you hitting them with a banner ad? What's causing that 20%? So as you get into this commerce side, especially if you have your own site, these are things you just want to pay attention to, because at the end of the day, it's making you money, and you want to know why. And it's hopefully helping you stay ahead of your competition. Here's some of the conversion rate, 2.9%, so they're pretty decent. They're looking at satisfaction. Here's some where they did a reseller. So when you guys talked about a distribution or distributor, so here they're actually using a reseller where they're referring their product to it. And I know today we use Amazon a lot. I sell a lot of products through Amazon as a reseller that sells our products for us. So there may be an opportunity to kind of hyper boost some of your sales pretty quickly. This talks about their revenue. Here's their orders. So they had 17,000 orders, and this particular week was 25% over that. So and those would be, why'd that happen? So once again, these are all about the KPIs, understand what's happening there. Here's one where it looks like their average sales price per unit was 53 bucks. So say you have 3 or 4 different types of product. What's your average sales price? It looks like average sales price per order was 119. So all that means is the average person that checks out just spent $119 on their site. So it looks like they bought 2 of those things, and they bought some other little widget or something. But Why is that? And if you bundle things together and you give a discount, does that help? These are things, once again, on the commerce side, it's a good way to do business, and your margins are typically a lot higher. It's not always for everybody. It's not always for every service, but something to look at. So scaling with technology. I got a couple slides, and I'm going to show a quick video, and then I'm going to let you guys talk amongst yourselves and do your thing. So the last piece I have was really talking about driving with technology. So I'm going to shift gears now and thinking about, well, okay, what does that mean? When you look at your customers today, the first thing you want to do is engage them. And engage them, what do you mean? It depends, of course, on your products and services. If you're selling something, a commodity that's just generic, they're either going to want it or they don't want it. But if you're trying to help sell them a service that's adding value to them, is how are you engaging them? Once when we talk about learning, how are they learning about your products? Typically, what are those methods that you're using? How are you sharing that type of information? And once they become your customers, when you look at, these are just strategies, when you look at grow, you don't want them going away. You don't want to lose them. Remember we talked about kind of that cost of acquisition to get that customer, cost per gross ad. Now you're talking about grow them. So how do you continue to upsell them or cross-sell them on your current products or your product line, or saying this is coming next? Maybe it's a feature on, maybe say you've got an app and the next set's going to have other things coming. You really want to keep them engaged, grow them. And the last thing, especially if you're a subscription model, how do you renew them? Because once again, it's going to cost you to get them back. So think about that. And maybe it's your service. Maybe you guys just have fantastic service. Maybe that's your strategies that you're going after. But keep them. If you got them, keep them happy. Listen to their needs. You know, you're just like you and me. If we're out on the site and we're looking for something and the price is better, yeah, but you're looking at the rankings in regards to how well they actually delivered the product and how well people actually use the product. And those are things that, and people are pretty savvy, especially in today's times. The other piece is using technology. You want to talk about marketing and sales and service, and I'm going to show you an example here in a second. You can buy these software solutions that will help you do that stuff. And it's not, you're not throwing bodies at it, you're throwing technology at it that scale really quickly, really effectively. I mean, I told you about, we grew to 325 people. Part of that was to help support the business. Another part was it would have cost a lot more people for the size of the counts that we were getting, but we leveraged technology to get us there. And that's what I was talking about, CRM. So let me go through. I got this last slide, and then we're going to jump into the video. Salesforce.com, I mentioned that to you guys earlier. There's a bunch of these different ones out there, but that's one that I've used in 3 different companies now, and it's a great application. It's easy to use. They have it geared for small businesses, mid-sized businesses, large enterprise businesses. You can run your sales. You can track all your prospects, your leads, your percent of sales. You can do your marketing. When we got to 325 folks, I ended up building a call center. I ran my call center off of it. I ran my whole marketing operations off of it. And then I ran all my sales worldwide off of that same application. The one really cool part was that anytime somebody called in or they sent us an email or one of my field sales guys was out there, all they had to do was pull up their phone, pull up that account. They could see the last time something was sold. They could see the last promotion we gave that company, the last time they ordered, how much they paid, the last time somebody called in on it, they had an issue or they had to return a product. Before I stepped through your door, or as soon as you called me, especially if they're calling into the call center, that was the first thing you did was hit the screen, their phone number popped up, and you saw that kind of information. So if you didn't have that, how many bodies would it take? How many Excel spreadsheets? How much information would it take to manage the? So that's my point. You can do the service side off it. And then the other piece, before we jump into the video, was the app exchange. And that's the same thing if I was to show you, same process, show you my iPhone, and then ultimately you can go out. Salesforce has this app exchange where you can buy these apps. If I say I'm going to sell 1 million units at $1 a unit, and they say, oh, and I'm going to get X% commission off of it, what happens if I sell 1.2 million at $1.50? And I go hit the button and it says, oh, I'm going to make a $10,000 more commission. What's my incentive to go sell it for a higher price and sell more? It's a lot easier when I can see it right in front of me or right on my phone versus if I've got to go run some Excel sheet or I got to call some commission person behind the scenes to tell me that. So once again, that's helping leverage technology to uplift your company in a whole different plane than where you may be at today. So those are things to think about. We talked about the LB GUPS model. So learn, buy, get, use, pay, support, and that foundational pieces that honestly is fundamental, but it forces you to think through, how am I going to grow this company? How am I going to scale it? And it's something you shouldn't be nervous or shouldn't be scared about. It'd be something you just got to put some energy and some thoughts about and help prioritize what you've got to go do, where you're thinking to be effective. And it's okay to try stuff. It's okay to fail. I fail a lot. I mean, it's opportunity. You just get up, get smarter, learn from it, and always pay attention to what your competitors are doing around you. Price your products where it makes good sense. We talked about KPIs, things you can measure, look at. I know I probably inundated on way too much information there, but there's just a lot of things in every company or product or service you're going to sell. Figure out the right things for you. Start simple, keep it basic, but that's that dashboard in front of you. When the fuel light goes on, you know, and you're 100 miles away from the next gas station, it's probably not a good thing, unless I guess you got a Prius, you may make it, I'm not sure, or Tesla. Scale and drive technology, we just covered some of, that's just one platform that's out there. Like I said, there's many. They are a leader in their space though, and they're doing great things with that, but there's a lot of other competitors out there too. So those are opportunities to keep your cost structure down and scale things pretty quickly. So I'll leave you with this thought. You know, what are the 4 F's? To be a successful company, especially a small to mid-sized company, you have to be fast, you have to be friendly, you have to be flexible, and you have to be focused. So fast, friendly, flexible, and focused.